broadcast that I sent out. But so I'll give you just a general synopsis of what I had to say, because it has a little bit to do with how short my hair is tonight. This is a day, I think, maybe saying that we'll live in infamy is not, maybe a little overstated, but this is a very powerful day in the history of this country. We will look back on this day. And it is partly because 9/11, but it has a lot to do with the Corker Amendment, and we're going to talk about the consequence of what that is with Iran. But with everything we've been talking about in this caucus, we've had pretty severe conversation about the Constitution. And in that message broadcast I sent out yesterday, I was in almost in a grieving process, folks, about what I have seen with our Constitution, because I honestly believe, and I have said it, that our Constitution has died. We've allowed it to. Now, the definition of death can come into play here. What does that mean? It's died. It's a document. How can it die? Well, in my broadcast I said, well, we don't care as a voting electorate to hold anyone accountable when they violate the terms of the Constitution. Now I'm going to show a couple videos tonight. It's going to be, I'm going to talk a little bit, probably a lot more about the Corker Amendment, and in a residual to that, I'm going to talk about Ted Cruz and what happened with the trade agreement that he allowed to come out of committee. He voted against it, and I understand it. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about voting for a provision, as did this Corker Amendment, to sidestep, circumvent the constitutional process of advice and consent. And today, we're going to be noted in history for the consequence of what that Corker Amendment did. The Corker Amendment set the approval of Congress up in a no means yes, yes means no situation. No means yes, and yes means no. In other words, President Obama could only get that approved if we couldn't get enough votes to override a veto if we rejected it in Congress. Now that's clumsy and it's awkward. But that vote that they had, that not one single Republican voted for, not one single Republican voted for this the Corker Amendment. This is why it's complicated. They voted to reject the Iran deal. The Republicans voted for the Corker Amendment, which set it up for a vote to reject the Iran deal. Now here's the problem. If you don't get a supermajority to override a presidential veto in the rejection, we'll fix that, don't worry about it. So they voted to reject it. But if you don't get a supermajority in the House and the Senate in voting for rejecting it, then President Obama will veto the outcome of that vote, and then it stands. Why was it ever there to where it takes 67 votes in the House and in the Senate and a supermajority in the House to block the Iran deal? Because originally the Constitution, through advice and consent, folks, would have done this with a simple vote of the Senate for advice and consent, and it would have taken a supermajority for the Iran deal, which is a treaty. No matter what anybody wants to say, it is a treaty. For that advice and consent, it would have taken 67 votes in the Senate. And I talked to you once before. There was a gal that was commissioned by, I think, True the Vote. Now I may be wrong about where she came from, but she was commissioned to go across the country and explain these votes. And so the Ted Cruz vote and the Corker Amendment bothered me, the way it went. So I figured this would be a good lady to talk to, because she's supposed to be able, to explain this to a drywall guy. And so what I asked her, I said, It took it out of the provision of advice and consent in the Senate. And she says, well, do you realize that the way it was, and I will never forget the phraseology that she used. She handled constitutional process with the words about the way it was. Because, you know, it isn't that way now. And why? But she said the way it was, it only took 37 votes to block it. In other words, the Republican one, she was referring to the trade agreement. In other words, the Republicans who were, quite frankly, holding the interests of the multinational corporations who want, and the pharmaceuticals, because that trade agreement, believe it or not, Big Pharma is all over that trade agreement, big time. And they lobbied the Republicans, and they wanted it. But what, and Obama wants it, and how that synergy works, I'm not quite sure. The Democrats haven't even gotten that one figured out. But Obama knew he couldn't get it through the Senate. He knew that couldn't get through the Senate. And this lady even said, well, the way it was, it would have only taken 37 votes to block that trade agreement, which was a treaty, by the way. Black's Law Dictionary defines exactly that as a treaty. If it ever got into the Supreme Court, if the Republicans would have ever sued and let it go to the Supreme Court would have decided that it's a treaty and had to be ratified. And here's the remedy, folks. The remedy is neither one of these agreements have been ratified constitutionally. See, the president ratifies it once he gets advice and consent. The advice and consent is not the ratifying of those treaties. But he has to have advice and consent before they can be ratified. So right now, neither one of them can become law. Just because they say they're law, because of the Corker procedure, because of the Ted Cruz initiated 51 votes straight up or down, that doesn't mean they're law. And if it ever goes to the Supreme Court, which is our remedy, that is the remedy, that someday one of these contests in law will end up all the way in the Supreme Court, and then it will be determined. Then it will be determined. Because this is undeniably so. They will review the book that sits on their desk. It's called the Black's Law Dictionary, about the definition of treaty. And both of these agreements fall dead center right on it. And they don't have advice and consent, so it is not law. But the consequence of calling it law has we've already suffered it. This is why right now my hair is short. I'm going to tell you why I had the barber take my hair off. Joe isn't here tonight, but he had a high and tight military cut, and it looked good on him. This doesn't look good on me. But my son-in-law, when he's in the Air Force, he gets a high and tight military cut. It looks good on him. A lot of our police officers have this kind of haircut, and it looks better on them than it looks on me. But you know, I did this in support of our military and our police officers. And I will continue to have my hair cut like this until the day that our republic is restored. So I may be condemned for a very long time to have my hair short. But I considered this very, very carefully. I want to support our police officers. I know there's some, what they call bad apples. I know it. We saw a tennis player in New York get taken down for some reason. And he's going to have remedy. He's probably going to get more money than he ever made playing tennis. Why they took him down, I don't know. We'll find that out. But he was just they're texting on his phone, it appears. But our military, our first line of defense, which we have been using over the last 10 to 20 years as offensive. We have badly placed our military, and they've gone honorably. And the reason I choose to honor them with a silly looking haircut, because they do it and they look good in it, and I want to tell them, when they look at me, I'm willing to take that look and honor you with that. And I mean it from my heart. Because what I see happening in this country in the next 5 years, because of this Obama deal with Iran, it's not pretty. And it's really, that's why I'm saying this day will live in infamy. This is going to be a historic theme that the people that we sent to Washington, our Tea Party darlings, voted for this Corker amendment. In the Senate, it was 99 to 1. There's 50 votes in the Senate. 99 to 1. So all the Democrats, no, hang on, I jumped the gun there. All the Republicans voted for the Corker amendment. It gets a little confusing, so I'm going to try to keep it straight in my own mind and ask you to keep it straight. The one person who voted against it in the Senate was the one Democrat who co-sponsored it.
Really?
Cotton.
Did he say why?
I'm picking on Cotton.
What changed his mind?
Because he, I guess I'm at a loss to give you a good answer to what changed his mind. But I'm wondering why Corker didn't have his mind changed. Why the same thing that changed Cotton's mind didn't change Corker's mind. Okay, so in the House now, it has to pass only by 51%. It would have only had to pass by 51 votes in the Senate because there's only 100 votes. So whatever the math works out to in the House, but all the Republicans voted for it. I don't know if there's any Republican that voted against it becoming the way that we approve this deal or disapprove. So it got approved in the House and the Senate. So therefore, once the treaty was languaged, and I'll refer to it as a treaty, once it was languaged, and it had to come to the House and the Senate 90 days before it could be enacted so they could review it. This was the constructs of what they voted for, but they had, once they said the Corker Amendment is in force, now we have to vote on it once it comes down. And they voted on it. Not one single Republican voted for it then. When it actually voted for the treaty, when they read it, and they didn't read it all, because the side agreements have not even been posted, which makes it illegal. But the fact of the matter is, it became illegal when they took it out of the advice and consent of the Senate. But now they're saying, well, we have legal redress. We can sue the president. Good luck with that. Remember Bill Clinton? The president, because we have taken it out of the Senate purview, can just use executive order and call it law. Doesn't matter how much you sue him. And the consequence, we're going to talk a little bit about the consequence. I want to show you a video of Vic Cavuto, and then there's another one that I forget who's doing it, but it talks about these people are saying, why isn't it a Senate process of advice and consent? They're saying that. It's not just me saying it. I've been saying it for a while. And it's something that Republicans and Democrats should be able to get together on. The consequence belongs to America. What we're going to do, folks, and listen to this. You hear me often, and I'm Frank Beckman this morning. I guess University of Michigan has a class that a professor was teaching, and a fellow called in and said, well, this liberal professor was really banging the military-industrial complex and blaming them for 9/11. And folks misunderstand about what's being said when I talk about the military-industrial complex. Because one thing that I'm not talking about is our military. When I talk about the multinational industrial complex, and all those words are very important. It's a multinational companies with corporations without borders, industrial complex that surround all militaries, not just American militaries. And with those folks, that multinational industrial complex, which is referred to by me at least, the military-industrial complex, which does not refer to our military who go honorably, and in support of them, I got my flag card. Because I had this message that needs to be understood. There is never money to be made for the military-industrial complex when there's peace. Do you understand what we just authorized today with the people who we sent up to Washington? How they abandoned us? They would have had to, unless they lived in a fantasy world of just absolute disbelief. They do not. I called it the state of denial. How can these people who are supposed to know, how can they live? I can understand voting electorate willing to suspend their disbelief, as Hillary has said. But these guys have done something that is consequential to your grandchildren. My daughter called me up, and I've got a grandson, and he's not aged for military yet, but my daughter told me that that's what he wants to do. He wants to go fight for America. And it was just like a cold steel going through my heart, because I know he will go honorably, because I know his parents. That makes me, it puts a fire in my belly to know that we've had people go in our name previous. And we will have those like my grandson and your grandsons and your granddaughters who will go because they love America, but we will send them because we have a Congress who's living either in denial or they're willingly suspending their disbelief. Now we'll get to a little bit about what that is. This Iran bill. It's not money we give them. That's $170 billion. We don't have $170 billion that we're going to give Iran. But what we do, what this bill has done, is freed up $170 billion that Iran can get a hold of now through the world banks that they couldn't get a hold of before. Now, General Vallely in this caucus a few weeks back, and he is stating it openly now, but it's not being covered. I don't hear anybody on Fox say this. I don't hear anybody anywhere saying this, other than General Vallely has a high degree of credibility, that Iran already has the nuclear bombs. It's a done deal, and Obama knows it. And when these emails are revealed that Hillary's trying to hide, it will be proven that they all know it. It will be shown through those emails that China hacked, folks. China hacked Hillary's email server. That's why Benghazi happened. Because China told the Syrians, the ISIS, we were supporting initially, we were supporting the rebellion against Gaddafi. We wanted Gaddafi out. Why did we want Gaddafi out? Remember I talked about the petrodollar bargain? Gaddafi was going to dump the petrodollar bargain and sell his oil in something other than U.S. dollars. We can't have that. So we supported that. But when Hillary was communicating back and forth, so the arms that fell into the hands of the anti-Gaddafi people, see, that these fighting groups over there, they sort of intermingle. These groups sort of fell into the anti-Assad group of ISIS. They sort of had overlap membership. So we wanted to use the same weapons that we sent to Gaddafi to get those and some more through Turkey, from Turkey through Benghazi to the Syrian rebels to overthrow Assad. Now, why is it that we have something in common with the Syrian rebels who want to overthrow Assad? There was two efforts to overthrow Assad. General Vallely was actually over there and part of one effort. And that was honorable, altruistic Syrians wanting their government back from a dictator who was killing his own people. And that failed. General Vallely had to leave. He had a fatwa put on his head. He had to leave with his life. That's where he got those two hernias I talked about. Just trying to get out from being killed. But then it came to the second effort. And this is the one that Obama and our State Department, through Hillary, supported to take Assad out. Now why? Why do we want Assad out? It goes back to that petrodollar bargain. Because even though Syria may not be an OPEC nation, I'm not sure if it is, but it may be, but they were selling oil in US dollars. And Assad stopped that. And he was going to conduit through his warm water ports oil and gas to China. And he was going to allow oil and gas to go there without having been purchased with US dollars. This theme seems to be repeating itself in just about every place that we send our military. That's why I say we mercenary our military. We send them out to protect our U.S. dollar because we say it's in national interest. But folks, I'm tired, and that's why I did the piece when Johnny comes marching home. And John's here tonight. I am tired of sending young patriot Americans to do a job that isn't defensive in nature. See, we have a Department of Defense. Same thing happened in Vietnam. Korea, I'm not so sure about. It's going back before my time. But the thing I do know is that we cannot continue to police the world in order to continue to force the U.S. dollar on these dictators and countries who are dumping them. Just about every region in the Middle East where we had a military presence, it's been over them dumping the U.S. dollar as the means of selling their oil. It is very consequential to our debt because the profits that they made when they did that, they were required to purchase our debt instruments and invest into the central banks that our country, that the Federal Reserve uses. So our debt was dependent. So here's what the cataclysm of today's events are. Now that was a little back history of why Hillary, by the way, it is the reason why I think the scenario that I'm going to paint in a little bit, I think Hillary has to have executive privilege. And what do you think that means? See, Bill Clinton used executive privilege to keep him from having to be deposed about any crime previous in Mena, Arkansas, any of those crimes. The thing that Bill Clinton got impeached for was not the Mena, Arkansas crimes. It was because he was deposed before a court and he lied in deposition as the president. He did an unlawful, disrespectful act as president, and the House impeached him, but the Senate wouldn't remove him. Why is it so important that Hillary has to have executive privilege that Bill Clinton enjoyed? You know, she can't be elected as president. She will never be president. How does she get executive privilege? And why does she need it? Why do this military-industrial complex personnel who has purchased Obama himself, and the people that surround this couple, why do they need Hillary to have executive privilege? Because in deposition, and this fellow who's claiming the Fifth Amendment, he's going to be given immunity. He's going to be ordered by the court to testify. And he will not testify. I guarantee you he will not testify. You know why he won't testify even though he gets immunity? And they can't put him in jail over anything. Yeah, Steve got it. Put a gun right here and said, bang. Remember Susan McDougal? She wanted to live. She went to jail. She was given immunity to testify against Bill Clinton. She claimed the Fifth Amendment. She says, I won't testify because if I say what you ask me, if I answer that, it's going to incriminate me. That's what the Fifth Amendment is. Fifth Amendment is admitting that I've done a crime and I can't testify against myself. Because the Constitution, again, that document that's very important to us, says that the court cannot compel you to testify against yourself. So therefore, the Fifth Amendment, and that's in the Fifth Amendment. When you claim the Fifth Amendment, you're saying the information that I give you will cause you to know that I've committed a crime. Therefore, I do not constitutionally have to answer that question. That's what you're saying when you claim the Fifth Amendment. So the pursuing body, which is the legislature, can then say, okay, we're going to remove the Fifth Amendment provision from this whole inquiry here because we're going to give you, and we can do it, we're going to give you what's called immunity. But that means it'll never be able to go against you in a court of law, what the answer you give us. So then a federal judge will order this fellow, as he did with McDougal, Susan McDougal, he will order him or her then, to testify, to answer that question. And if they don't answer, he will say you are guilty of the term slips my mind right now, violating a court order, and you will go to jail. Why would they go to jail when they have immunity and they could just go home? Because there are key, very elevated people who will be put in jail if they testify. So they would, if he doesn't accept that immunity, I mean, if he testifies, they will kill him before he testifies. He knows it. He knows what he's involved in. Susan McDougal knows it. Now, so how is it that Hillary can get executive privilege? Through the 12th Amendment, folks. Through the 12th Amendment. If anybody, and I had a scenario, and I'm a scenario thinker, and I was thinking Donald Trump's going to not get the nomination, he's going to go third party. I don't know if that happens or not, but I'll just say this. It could be Hillary on the Democrat side that goes third party. But if anybody gets 3 electors as a third party candidate, it will keep either party from getting 270 electors. And it will throw them into the 12th Amendment, of which the House decides who the president's going to be. And we did the demographics on this. It will be a Republican president. But it has to be a choice of one of the top 3 elector getters. So if 2 got 255 and 1 got 3 or 4 that kept, or 265, and 1 third-party candidate got 3 or 4 that kept them from getting the 270, then the House gets to vote from those 3. So say it's Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, and Donald Trump. Of those 3, somehow the configuration is that House chooses Jeb Bush. We know that in a 12th Amendment scenario. Then this is the key thing right here. Who chooses the vice president? It's the Senate. Under the same procedure. 51 votes there. See, 26 votes in the House wins the president. Because it only takes one, each state gets 1 vote. So 26 votes in the House determines the president. In the Senate, it only takes 26 votes also, because you have 50 senators. So a simple majority of the whole body of the Senate declares who's vice president. So if Jeb Bush is taken out of that 3-person picture, right? Because he won the presidency through the House, you've got 2 people left. Hillary or Donald Trump. Who's the Senate going to who's the Senate going to choose? They're not going to choose, and quite frankly, the Senate knows that this thing has to be covered up, because some of them will go to jail. This is why I have said, folks, the Constitution is dead. And I'm angry because we won't even hold a memorial service. By the way, Sarah's father passed a few weeks ago, and remember Reuben, the preacher that came and spoke to us from Haiti? He's going to do a memorial service for Sarah's father at the over here off Holmes Road, the Eagles. And Reuben wouldn't get near that place because it's a place where folks, are members, and they do have drinking activities going on there. But he's going to go there to minister to families. And Sarah came over to me. I don't want to hear this. She came over to me tonight because I hooked Reuben up with the need of the family. She gave me a big hug because they want to have a memorial of her father. Her father's last words to her was that she should find a good church to get in and serve the Lord. That was her father's last words to her. And so it means something to her. You folks, because of our caucus, because of the way we do things here, because we had Reuben here, because Sarah's here, God worked all of that out. It's going to be a big blessing tomorrow. But the point I was making is our Constitution has died. And we will not even hold a memorial service because we are living in the 51st state. We've added a new state. It's the state of denial. Obama thought we had 57. But we are living as a voting electorate. We are living in denial, folks. Because we think we still have a live and active Constitution. When over and over and over again, it is proven to us that the Supreme Court can make law and say that marriage is in the Constitution, which it is not. It has already said that you have an abortion right in the Constitution, and you do not. There is no right to an abortion in the Constitution. What the Constitution affords you is privacy, And they contorted that under the 14th Amendment to mean that you have the privacy to kill a child in your own room. And my answer to those who make that contention, do you have the privacy to kill your husband in your bedroom? Because if privacy protects the murder of a child, then why shouldn't that 14th Amendment protect the murder of your husband or your 10-year-old? You find out that he turned out to be a real bad one. And why wouldn't privacy protect that murder? See, we have contorted and we have allowed it. We live in denial. Marriage is not in the Constitution. The Supreme Court very badly said it was. Marriage, having not been mentioned in Article 1 through 6, is reserved to the people or in the state through the 10th Amendment and the 9th Amendment. That means that DOMAs should have been constitutional. But since they aren't, I'm going for the Supreme Court decision, which I think will come, folks, that government has no right to issue license, period. That's a winner for everybody. We're not going to go there tonight. That's another seminar. But this thing that we are authorizing through denial, and Democrats are clamoring for, this is a great thing. Deborah Washington Schultz has said this is a great thing. It gives us an opportunity to control Iran getting the nuke. They've already got it. They got it already and they know it. What we have done is allowed them the money to free up from world banks $170 billion. Now, that military, industrial, multinational complex, not our military, that complex that makes the intercontinental ballistic missiles that Iran needs now, since they have the nuclear weapon, the nuclear bomb, they got it, certified by Paul Vallely and his group. Challenge him if you like, but I wouldn't challenge the character of General Vallely if I were you. He is right. Iran has that nuclear bomb already. So the military-industrial complex has this great need for making money, and you know they have no conscience. They have no conscience. They'll sear their soul on the altar of commerce, and they will cast their care on the altar of the burning out. They have to, it's called the cremation of care. There is actually a ceremony. Now it's debatable. People will say Alex Jones is crazy. Kind of, you know, but about 80% of what he says is good and 20% will get you killed. But he's right about the cremation of care. World leaders and world corporate leaders have to have their care cremated, folks. Because it is true that we can't handle the truth in the Constitution, the makeup that we have as human beings.